friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Complete Life. And with you, your host, Estelle and Wonderland. So, the topic that I want to talk to you today about is my journey of um, inter- entrepreneurship, or rather, my journey from being an employee to an entrepreneur, and the mindset around it, and how I'm working through all of those mindsets. And I just wanted to share this at this point in my growth, after 1 year and 8 months of working as an entrepreneur, as a coach, having a practice and running this practice, and at the same time being the entrepreneur. And what are the mindsets that I have worked on, and how that was, and what are the challenges that I've experienced in working through that mindset. For anyone who may be considering becoming a coach or becoming an entrepreneur and wondering how that's like, and what are the mind shifts that you might need to work on in order to get to your goal, right? So I have put some list here that I want to go through, and if you have any questions around it, or if you want to talk about it, you let me know, and I'm happy to talk about it. So I think the biggest challenge that I have experienced in the entrepreneur world after being an employee for 10 years in the humanitarian world is expecting things to go in the linear way. And what I mean by it is like expecting that the income that I will be having the same, it will be similar, or it will go incrementally, or expecting that my schedule for the week, for the month will be the similar things, expecting all of these things, and then realizing that it's not how things work. And being okay with that, I think it was probably the biggest challenge, because my brain, being in the very organized and planning mindset in the humanitarian world, I used to be great at planning for the year, for I don't know, for the months, and then planning with my team and all the things. And then now that becoming an entrepreneur meant that I didn't have any of those systems in place, obviously, and I started working on it from scratch. But also how to be okay with not being able to plan and not having the same results every month the way that I expected, right? So my mind wanted to say that if we're earning, let's say 10K this month, it means the next month it will be 20K, and then 30K. This is like the incremental growth that my mind expected. And then the entrepreneurial world was not like that, at least in the beginning, right? So maybe I still have work to do on growing and becoming the person who makes consistent results. But so far, I have realized that it has a lot of the ups and downs, and also it has a lot of the um, you don't know what could happen, and all of a sudden you may actually have a 15K month or 20K month, and then you're like, and then maybe next month is something like less, or not what you expected, and that will happen. And I see that it's happening at least in the beginning of the journey, I would say. And I think as you go along and start creating this consistency in your results, then you can expect the incremental growth. So that's, I think, the biggest mind shift that I needed to be okay with, and also realizing that uh, for instance, now I'm working on the mindset of how am I going to continue believing that I create these results, even though the numbers don't support it, or even though some tangible evidence don't support it, right? So how can I do that and continue working on it, believing and trusting that this is happening? And this was probably the biggest challenge that I have encountered, because I think in my employee mindset, I would always rely on the evidence and say, this is the evidence saying that we can expect this and we cannot expect this. But here in the entrepreneurial world, yes, evidence is important to an extent, but we don't want to allow that evidence to stall us or to play small or to keep us not moving forward in the unpredictable manners the way you want it, right? So that's why I am now realizing that I do not want to let the evidence dictate how much I can grow or not, right? So, like in the coaching world, we talk about the growth based on the past or growth based on the future. And the way that I have now been shifting my mind around a lot is how can I grow from the future of what else is possible rather than what was possible. Right. So that's why shifting to that was, yeah, probably the biggest challenge, but also I think I continue currently working on it and reminding myself that my growth is never a linear. If I have this, then I will have this next month. It's more like I have this next month. I don't even know what's going to happen, but I know that I'm going to grow so much. So that's like the big piece of it. The other big piece that the mind shift that I was working around is in the employee mindset. I had a lot of knowing the rules, right? Knowing the framework, knowing the strategies, knowing all of this. You would read it, you would discuss with your colleagues, you would have all the standard operating procedures, SOPs, and all the things, and then you would continue doing all the work within that framework that you have been set for. You have that, and then you just continue working within it. Of course, things don't never work exactly the way that we have laid it out, but at least we have those limits that we don't allow ourselves to go beyond it, right? In the entrepreneurial world that I have experienced, that there is no rule. Obviously, in the coaching practice and as a coach, you have a lot of rules and you want to follow them because in order not to do harm and all of this. And I'm not talking about that part, but I'm more talking about as an entrepreneur to grow your business, to grow your practice, you will encounter a lot of people offering you solutions as to what you need to do in order to grow and to become this millionaire or whatever the things that people promise you, right? And having followed and learned a lot and trying to follow any of those rules, I have realized that there is none. And when you have this realization that you don't have any rules to follow in that sense, then you're like, huh, now what? And this is the great news, obviously, but also a bit of a shocking news for someone who have followed the rules the whole time, right? I mean, from my history of like in school and university and then in another university. So I've been always following the rules of how to grow and what to do and how to become this person who gets a job and all these things. And then here you are an entrepreneur, you're getting your practice up and running, and you're going forward to how to market it or what to do, how to communicate, and how to talk to people, and all of these things. And somehow there's no rule. There's so many ways you can do that, and it sounds also overwhelming at times. But what I have realized is that I actually want to love it that there is no rule. Maybe the only rule is that I need to pay tax, which is fine. I'm doing that. But beside that, there is no rule, and that's also like exhilarating. It's also like freeing to know that you could try out 1,000 different ways to get to what you want to, and you get to experiment with so many different ways as well. And there is never a one path to follow. right? And in that regard, I think the biggest challenge that I needed to work on, and I continue probably also working on now, is the constraint aspect, which I had difficulty honestly doing it because whenever you are an entrepreneur, what happens oftentimes is that you have this feeling of, oh, I need to now start providing for my family, start getting, the resources, the money, and how are you going to do that? And you will be in this like a bit of a vigilance, this what's the other English word that I'm looking for, this alert version of you who is like, okay, now I need to get everything set up and put up, and so that I can start um, having my safety, knowing that I am not gonna, go on hunger and not being able to support my family and all of these things, right? So that's why you will have that state of alert and wanting to do lots of things, and you will be acting a lot from the scarcity mindset of what if I won't have time to earn enough, or what if I won't have this and I won't have that, and you will have that, and that's okay. I feel like that's like the way things, this is how you start, but then realizing that that is one way of functioning, one way of becoming an entrepreneur, but there is also another way of becoming an entrepreneur where you actually need to trust yourself and your abilities a lot, and doing things, continue doing things in one direction, choosing one thing and constraining yourself, and then trusting that that will yield the result. Then you will be learning your lessons and continue improving that, instead of jumping onto different things, or jumping onto different like different projects and different things, and then see which one works out, right? Which one gets me whatever the short-term results I'm wanting. And that leads me to the next challenge that I want to talk about, which is the short term versus long term. And oftentimes, obviously, my brain wants to seek a reward, seek a recognition, seek a validation, and therefore wants to get short term goals achieved, and then feeling like I'm accomplished or I'm successful and whatever, right? So this is, I think, also something that every brain in some way struggles. And what I'm trying to learn how to balance with the long-term engagement and long-term investment and long-term vision of where I'm heading, at least like 2 years, 3 years, if it's not 1 year, or sorry, if it's not longer. And how are you going to continue working on that long-term vision, even though in the short run there are so many things and so many failures that you will be encountering that you need to work through, and continue believing that this is going to work, right? So I think that's the other challenge, is like a lot of the times my brain would be telling me it's not working, it doesn't work, it's not working this way, so jump to the next project, jump to the next thing, the next thing. and and I'm realizing that let's not do that. So if you are new, take my word from me is to say your brain will be saying a lot of the times it's not working, and that's part of it. Somehow I don't know why. I mean, evolutionary and psychologically there are lots of explanations for it, but my brain also wants to say things like, well, I don't really know why my brain does it, it does it, and I don't want to listen to it. So that's why it's so important that when you are looking in the long term of, I always need to remind myself that I'm here for a long term um, work, and I'm not going to abandon things or abandon my work just because things are not working, or I'm believing that things are not working. because I'm not going to jump in just because I run out of money or I run out of ideas or I'm running into problems or failures that I will be just saying to myself, okay, it's not going to work. Let's just stop it and go and do whatever else I know best because at least I have success in that, right? So I'm not going to do that because I am in this work for a long time and I want to show to my own brain that I can make things work the way I want to and not chicken out or not giving up the minute I believe it's not working. So that's why learning to measure, learning to evaluate why it's not working, how it's not working, um, what to do about it, and how to fix these problems in the moment become like very essential skills that I needed to develop because in my employee mind before it was always the lessons learned was part of my journey, but I always would do it with other people and I felt like there was always these explanations that I used together with my team of this is not working because of the system, this is not working because of the external circumstances, because of other actors, and all of this stuff, right? But in the entrepreneur world where I am now, there is no such explanations. And even if I would use explanations like, well, people are not just interested in coaching, or people are not familiar with my work, or whatever the other explanations I want to use, they are not useful. They're not really useful in the sense of, okay, so what am I going to do with that, right? So always taking back the responsibility and ask myself, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to solve that problem? What are the ways that I can do this, and what are the ways that I will solve for it? So you can see that in my entrepreneurial journey, everything that the result that I'm creating, I am creating with my own thoughts, with my own beliefs. And if I don't like that result, then I need to work on myself to change it instead of wanting to find explanation somewhere else. Right. So that's why I feel like it's so uh like great to realize that, but also challenging at times because you just want to say, well, it's just not working because the market is like this or whatever, right? But in the end of the day, I know that it's not the market, it's me, and I want to continue growing my mind, growing my self development, growing myself to create the results exactly the way I want to. Because that's also the purpose and the work that I'm doing with my clients. And that requires a lot of trust in myself and my abilities in learning how to solve problems and how to resolve whatever the issue that I believe is the issue in order to get to the results. The other one that it's similar and related to this is I only get paid if I help a client achieve a specific result, right? And this was also scary at sometimes in the beginning, especially when I would guarantee people their money back if they didn't get the results, and then I would have a lot of work, like drama around I did all the things, and if the client didn't get results, it's their fault, and what am I gonna do, right? So this was like the direction that my mind wanted to go. But I have learned so much thanks to my amazing coaches who would tell me that what if you guaranteed them the result, and if they didn't get their result, you would uh, reimburse their money, but you learn so much of the lesson by doing it so that the next time you will actually be even better coach and create even better results. Are you willing to do that? And I think it was it took me some time to realize it, but I have now it's arrived at the point where that's exactly how I want to function in the world. That's exactly how I want my philosophy to be. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I changed my work from being an employee to an entrepreneur to being a coach is I wanted to get paid for a specific result that client is happy about. I didn't want to get paid just for the process of doing things, right? Like I didn't want to get paid for activities as such. I wanted to get for the result. Now, don't get me wrong to say that process is not important. Of course, process is as important as the result, but in the end, what clients want to see changing is actually how they feel about themselves, how they lead their lives, and how they create the results they want. And the measurement is done by that. So whenever I can help people get to that, that means that I have earned my money. And that gives me so much joy to do that. And whenever I hear my clients achieving amazing results, I'm like, exactly, that's exactly the reason why I want to put all the efforts to work on my own growth so that I know how to solve for those problems and how to help my clients solve it. So that's why it's a great match and great philosophy to follow to being paid only for the results that you get with the people that you're working with. I think also the just to add to that is that the other thing that helps me in that process is not being in this rescue mode, which I don't want to be anymore. Like, let me rescue you. You need help, and I'm here to help you. It's more like I trust your abilities that you can get to what you want to. I help you in that process to help you use your own resources, your own wisdom, your own philosophy to get to what you want so that it's sustainable, that it is um, solved at once so that the person can then independently to achieve even bigger results, right? So that's why I love this philosophy of getting paid for the specific results, and those results actually uh, are there as a result of people learning to trust themselves, learning to trust their abilities, and learning to achieve the results, recognizing how much they actually can do, um, and how much they can achieve. And that skill, that realization stays with them forever, right? So the other one that I worked on a lot and I continue again working on now is valuing my own work. And I think in the past, I was in the mindset a bit of not really valuing my work and saying like, well, why does it matter? It doesn't really matter. Whatever we do in the end, it will work out this way. So why bother doing this? Why bother doing that? And whatever the explanations that I would have. And I think that mindset needed to shift. And whatever the work I'm doing now, I'm trying to see what's the value of that work, how that will help myself or someone else. And if not, then there's no point in doing it. Right. So that's why um, valuing whatever you're working on, how it's valuable and why it's valuable, and knowing and recognizing and to make it valuable and then to test it is a lot of mindset shift around it. I feel, excuse me. So that's why I didn't realize that for so long in my entrepreneurial journey, I wasn't really valuing my own work. I was a bit like, oh yeah, this is how things are done. this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is what I'm supposed to say, or whatever the thing I was believing, instead of looking at how can I make this very valuable and how can I, or why it's valuable, and recognizing that, and then recognizing that within me before sharing it with the world. So that's the work you may need to do that as well if you haven't done it yet. The other big one is obligation versus wanting. I had a lot of the mindset of I'm obliged to do this, or I'm supposed to do this according to a TOR, or whatever it is, right? And when you're in entrepreneurial space, you no longer have any of those obligations as such, except the paying taxes, as I said. So how do you turn all of the things into if there is no obligation, then how can you do all of this work out of wanting to do it, right? Because also it's easy that you start saying like, well, as an entrepreneur, I'm supposed to do this and this and this to get to this result. But what if that's not the case? What if you actually get to find whatever the thousand ways you get to the results? Like I was saying, there are no rules, so therefore don't put yourself in the obligation mode of I'm supposed to, but rather, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do this to get the result that I want? Why am I not getting the result I want? And um, how do I want to change it? Right. So that's why wanting becomes so crucial, because at some point we also get into the routine of this is how things done, but no, we have a chance and a possibility to do things so differently. So let's use it and do things just because we want to do it this way. And even if you don't see much result, but you want to do it this way because that's close to your heart. This is how you want to connect with the world. This is how you want to reach out to the world. So let's do it from the wanting, not from the obligation. Um, the other thing that I needed to work on the mindset of the more the better, or the busy is good. This were, I think, the mindset that I had from before. And in the entrepreneurial space, busy means I'm not really managing my mind, and that's not really good. And the more means I'm not really efficient, right? In getting things done. So, like the more time spent on something, or the more time spent on results, the more time spent on meetings or whatever. So, shifting my mindset from no, I don't want to be busy. I want to be effective. I want to be efficient, and I want to get things done in the shortest amount of time, but in the better, creating better results in the simplest ways, in the less complicated ways. And how can I do that? And I needed to work a lot around that mindset of getting myself from more complex things, more systematic things, to making it very simple, very efficient, uh, without compromising the quality. And this was the shift that I needed to work on. I no longer have this feeling of I don't have time, or I'm busy. I don't even want to be busy anymore. And I'm actually, yeah, I'm not busy, and I love the things that I do. And I also always find time um, for people that I love. So be it in my relationship, or be it my clients, be it new clients, whoever, I always find time for them. And being in that mindset and creating that life where I'm not busy, and I love that state of not being busy and having the time to dedicate to whatever you want is amazing. But I feel like it requires that shift that you need to make, right? If you're someone, especially who always believe you're busy and you don't have time for things that you want to do. So entrepreneurial space, I feel like gets you to the place where you're no longer busy doing things that you are obliged, but rather you want to be doing things that you really crave to create the result that you want. And the last point that is actually probably the biggest, the most important, if you look at the grand scheme of things, is the more of you, unique you, is the better. And this is the mindset that I also struggled a lot, I feel, because of trying to follow others or trying to follow whatever other people say, but rather looking at who you really are and how can you show that to the world. How can you be you and show up the way you want to and still achieve amazing results? Because there will be a lot of filtering that happens. I feel like, at least in my case, this is what it was. It's like I had a lot of filtering of, oh, I'm supposed to do this, or I'm supposed to be this, or now I need to get this, or whatever it is, or I can't show up this way because I'm not experienced, or whatever. But showing up the true who you are is actually more beneficial than following the rules. And oftentimes my brain doesn't want to believe me in that. And my brain tells me that, well, we're going to destroy things, or we're not going to be able to um, connect with people because they don't really want to. Um, I don't know. They don't really want to hear about this. They don't really want to hear about this failure or whatever. You can't really be vulnerable, right? So a lot of that my brain tells me to protect me, and I can totally understand it. But if we want to be in the entrepreneurial space and creating unique ways of interacting with people, helping them get results, then the more of you, the better. The the more of you who is you uniquely is better. And I have been thinking of myself like an artist, I guess, in some way, of being the person who shows up the true me, shows up in the best way of who I am, and also sharing the journey that I'm leading, and the journey that is full of lots of different emotions, of amazing emotions, but also emotions of fear, emotions of shame, disappointment, frustration, and then just showing that and saying, this is how my journey is. This is who I am. This is how I'm handling it. This is how I'm trying to manage. This is how I'm failing at times, and this is how I'm managing it other times. And this is an amazing part of entrepreneurial journey. And I'm so happy that I'm following this journey with its amazing growth and also amazing ways to go all the way down, and then knowing that you can go up again because this is part of how it's supposed to be. So thank you so much for listening to my mindset shift of being an employee and then an entrepreneur, and coaching myself and getting coached on the process of becoming this new me or another me, or whatever the way you want to understand it. For me, it's the new journey that I'm taking, and I'm loving it. And if that's something that you are interested in, let's chat. I would be happy to help you on that journey as well, and just growing to become the person you want to be. Okay, my dears. Have an amazing weekend. Talk to you next week. Bye.